Before the SAS ever fired a shot at Loughgall, this same handful of men had already driven a bomb through a police station fence, levelled a barracks, and planned to do it a third time. The standard account of Loughgall begins on the British side, with intelligence, with the soldiers, with the gunfire that lasted a few seconds and killed 8 people. This account begins earlier, with the unit itself and with its own documented campaign across County Armagh and County Tyrone in the 2 years before it arrived in a village it had studied and selected. Once you lay that campaign out in sequence, the question nobody wanted to sit with becomes unavoidable. What was the bomb actually for? Loughgall didn't begin on the 8th of May 1987. It began with a specific IRA unit's deliberate strategy of destroying rural police stations. And once you lay that strategy out in order, the word ambush starts to carry a different weight. To understand what this unit was doing, start with what they were attacking. Rural RUC stations in County Armagh and County Tyrone in the mid-1980s operated on severely restricted schedules. Part-time, lightly staffed, utterly predictable. Loughgall's station, the third target, opened from 9 in the morning until 11, and again from 5 in the afternoon until 7 in the evening. 3 local officers worked those hours. Outside those windows, the building sat empty. The perimeter was a high wire fence, the kind constructed to deflect grenades and lobbed mortars, not to stop a several-ton construction vehicle moving at speed. These weren't fortresses. They were small, rural buildings on village roads, surrounded by chain link, staffed at known times by a handful of men who lived locally and followed the same schedule week after week. They were soft targets by design. The part-time model meant to put police presence into small communities without the cost of a full garrison. From the perspective of the East Tyrone Brigade, that predictability wasn't a flaw in the target, it was the point. The IRA's East Tyrone Brigade had built a strategic doctrine around exactly this vulnerability. Jim Lynagh, the unit's principal strategist, had developed it while imprisoned in the maze in the 1970s, drawing on Mao Zedong's theory of protracted guerrilla warfare and adapting it to the border counties. Destroy the isolated rural police stations, prevent reconstruction, deny the security forces the ground, and expand the areas where British control couldn't be sustained. The IRA's Northern Command approved a scaled-down version, aimed at destroying and disrupting rather than holding territory outright. Over a year and a half in the mid-1980s, the East Tyrone Brigade attacked RUC barracks and stations in Ballygawley, Tynan, the Birches, Coal Island, Dungannon and Carrickmore, a campaign that was still running when Loughgall ended it. The barracks destruction campaign began, on the record, on the 7th of December 1985. Saturday evening, 6:55, Ballygawley, County Tyrone. A small RUC barracks on the edge of a market town, one of the county's most exposed positions. 2 active service units from the East Tyrone Brigade had positioned themselves around it, timing the operation to the shift change, the brief window when one set of officers was handing over to another, when the building was occupied but in transition, when the men inside would be tired, distracted, moving. The operation was commanded by Patrick Joseph Kelly, born in Carrickfergus, County Antrim, on the 19th of March 1957. He had moved with his family to Dungannon at 16. He had been a member of the Provisional IRA since the early 1970s and had risen by 1985 to become officer commanding the East Tyrone Brigade. His uncle was Liam Kelly, the Irish Republican activist. Patrick Kelly brought a particular quality to the brigade's leadership, discipline and a calm that those around him apparently found steadying. He planned operations carefully and executed them with precision. Ballygawley was the first major demonstration of what that combination produced. The assault unit carried AK-47 and AR-15 type rifles. 2 men had been concealed near the entrance gate, waiting. When Constable George Gilliland, 34 years old, and Reserve Constable William Clements, 52, opened the gate as part of their shift routine, they were shot dead at close range in the first burst. Clements's Ruger Security 6 revolver was taken from his body before the assault team moved into the building. A gun team laid down automatic fire across the front of the barracks, covering the entrance while a bomb unit moved inside. They stripped the building of documents and weapons. They placed an approximately 100-pound device inside the structure itself. 3 further RUC officers, who had been deeper in the building, fled through a back door as the fire intensified. 10 minutes after the bomb was set, it detonated. The barracks was completely destroyed. The brigade's own account appeared in Iris magazine, October 1987, nearly 2 years after the attack. One volunteer took up a position close to the front gate. 2 RUC men opened the gate, and the volunteer calmly stepped forward, shooting them both dead at point-blank range. Volunteers firing AK-47 and Armalite rifles moved into the barracks, raking it with gunfire. Having secured the building, they planted a 100-pound bomb inside. The bomb exploded, totally destroying the building after the volunteers had withdrawn to safety. That is the unit describing itself in its own publication with enough operational pride in the execution to record it for posterity. No hedging, no ambiguity about what the purpose was. 2 constables killed, 3 others wounded, a building taken apart from the inside. No IRA casualties. The first operation was a clean, tactical success by any measure the unit would have applied. The British Army's X-Company, 1st Battalion, Royal Regiment of Fusiliers, was the first unit to arrive at the site. The station was rebuilt by Royal Engineers in 1986, which was, from the brigade's perspective, a second opportunity at the same target, and a demonstration that the British authorities weren't willing to accept the loss of a position. That stubbornness was useful to the brigade as a recruiting argument, but it also meant the cycle of attack and repair would continue until something forced a different resolution. The Ruger Security 6, taken from Clements's body, didn't stay in a hiding place. It was taken back across the border. It remained in service. It would appear again. The campaign that produced Ballygawley belonged to 3 men working in deliberate coordination. And understanding what happened at Loughgall requires understanding who those men were before they got there. Patrick Kelly was the operational commander, disciplined, experienced, regarded as a bridge between local units and the IRA's general headquarters. In 1985, he became brigade commander and began translating the brigade's strategic doctrine into dated operations against specific targets. Jim Lynagh was the architect. Born on the 13th of April 1956 on the Tully Estate, a housing estate in the townland of Killygowan on the southern edge of Monaghan Town, County Monaghan. One of 12 children. His family didn't have a tradition of Republican activism. His parents held anti-IRA views. He joined the IRA in the early 1970s anyway, by his own conviction, in a political climate that made recruitment easy. In December 1973, when Lynagh was 17, a bomb he was transporting detonated prematurely. He was badly injured and arrested. Convicted on explosives charges, he spent 5 years in the Maze prison, Long Kesh, where he found himself among the movement's most committed prisoners. and used the time with characteristic intensity. He read Mao Zedong, Vo Nguyen Giap, and Che Guevara. He studied the history of the IRA's flying columns from the War of Independence. He wrote. He argued. By the time he was released, around 1978 or 1979, he had a fully formed strategic philosophy and the determination to apply it. In 1979, he was elected a Sinn Féin councillor for Monaghan Urban District Council. He held that position continuously from 1979 until the evening of the 8th of May, 1987, attending council meetings, accountable to constituents, simultaneously commanding paramilitary operations against police barracks 30 miles away. The Guardian's 2002 reporting described him flatly as a Sinn Féin councillor across the Irish border in County Monaghan at the time of the Loughgall incident. His electoral mandate and his operational role weren't separated by a careful partition in his own thinking. They were, for Lynagh, expressions of the same commitment, both directed toward the same end. The RUC reportedly called him the executioner. He was arrested and interrogated many times by the Garda Síochána in County Monaghan and was never charged. Lynagh's strategic doctrine was total in its ambition. Create liberated zones beginning in East Tyrone, where British Army and RUC presence would be physically removed through sustained military pressure, expanding outward as territory was cleared and consolidated. The IRA's Chief of Staff, Kevin McKenna, rejected the flying column plan as too impractical and unsustainable. Northern Command approved a limited version. From 1984, Lynagh began working directly with Padraig McKerney, who shared his strategic outlook and brought to the enterprise a particular kind of credibility. McKerney came from Moy, County Tyrone, 32 years old at the time of Loughgall. Both his grandfathers had fought in the IRA during the War of Independence. He had joined the Provisional IRA himself, been arrested in 1972 on charges of blowing up the post office in Moy, released after 6 weeks on remand, arrested again in December 1973, and later sentenced to 7 years for possession of a rifle. He served time in Lynagh. A younger brother, Sean, was killed in a premature explosion in 1974. An older brother, Tommy, had been sentenced to life imprisonment. An uncle and another brother were murdered by loyalist paramilitaries. The McKerney family had paid a substantial cost by 1983, and Padraig McKerney was still operating. On the 25th of September 1983, he was one of 38 prisoners who escaped from H Block in the Maze, the largest prison break in Europe since the Second World War. The escape was planned inside for months. Prisoners smuggled in firearms and used them to overpower guards. A food lorry was hijacked inside the complex. 38 men walked out through the main gate. One was captured that night by an army patrol. 2 more were arrested near Castle Welland the following day. McKerney wasn't among them. He was back in the field by early 1984. The justice system had held McKerney twice and watched him leave through the gate at gunpoint. These weren't men who stumbled into paramilitary activity at the end of a desperate moment. They were experienced, strategically coherent operators with documented prior records, a coherent military philosophy, and the demonstrated capacity to continue operations after every form of legal intervention the state had managed to apply. 9 months after Ballygawley, the brigade refined the delivery mechanism in a way that changed everything that came after. Monday the 11th of August, 1986. The target was the RUC base at The Birches, near Portadown, County Armagh. a low utilitarian building behind a high wire perimeter fence that sat in the Birches townland on a quiet road. The station was unmanned at the time of the attack. The brigade knew it, expected no armed response, and had not come to engage personnel. They had come to demonstrate something: that a fortified perimeter fence wasn't an obstacle to a several-ton construction vehicle with a bomb in its bucket. The preparation was meticulous. Days before the attack, a team had identified and located a JCB mechanical excavator at Washing Bay on the County Tyrone shore of Lynagh. The escape route had been arranged, a boat acquired at gunpoint from the Ardbow area to carry the gun team across the water and away from any roadblocks the security forces might establish after the sound of an explosion reached them. A separate team was detailed to stage a diversionary bomb attack at Pomeroy RUC station in County Tyrone, 15 miles north, to draw security force attention away from the real target before the operation went in. On the day, the JCB was hijacked at Washing Bay as planned. The digger was most likely driven by Declan Arthurs, 20 years old, from Ballygawley, County Tyrone, the fourth of 6 children of Paddy and Amelia Arthurs. He had grown up working farm machinery on the family land. Driving a digger wasn't a skill he had learned for this purpose. It was a skill he had learned on a farm and brought with him when he joined the East Tyrone Brigade in 1982 in the wake of Martin Herson's death on hunger strike. Herson was also from Ballygawley. In the small, tight-knit communities of County Tyrone, these connections weren't coincidences. They were the social texture from which the brigade drew its members. Approximately 35 people were reportedly involved across planning, execution, diversion, and extraction. It was a brigade-level operation, not an improvised action. The attack sequence at the Birches was precise and controlled. IRA gunmen climbed from a van and raked the station building with automatic weapons fire, establishing suppression, filling the air with noise and rounds, dominating the space around the station even though no one was inside to return fire. Simultaneously, Arthurs drove the JCB carrying the 200-pound bomb in its front bucket directly at the high-wire fence protecting the compound. The fence had been constructed to stop mortars and grenades. It wasn't rated for a loaded excavator. The JCB went through it. The bomb was in an oil drum. A volunteer lit the fuse. The team retreated to the waiting van. The blast destroyed most of the station. It was powerful enough to blow the roof off a pub on the opposite side of the road. Several civilians sustained minor injuries, none from within the station, because nobody was in the station. The gun team's van was found abandoned on the Lynagh shore, its occupants already across the water. A member of the British security forces described the aftermath to journalist Mark Urban in terms that weren't the language of casual concern. The Birches RUC station was destroyed by the bomb, creating problems for the authorities about how to rebuild it. The Tyrone IRA was able to combine practical skills such as bomb making and the welding needed to make mortars with considerable resources. Its members went on operations carrying the latest assault rifles and often wore body armour similar to that used by the security forces, giving them protection against pistol or submachine gun fire. By 1987, they had also succeeded in obtaining night sights, allowing them to aim weapons or observe their enemy in darkness. That assessment was delivered from inside the apparatus being attacked. The Birches wasn't the work of an under-resourced group improvising with available materials. By 1986, the East Tyrone Brigade was carrying assault rifles, wearing body armour equivalent to the security forces, and operating with night vision capability. The bomb delivery innovation at the Birches wasn't the accidental discovery of an amateur. It was the deliberate solution to a specific tactical problem. How to get a large enough device through a protected perimeter fence without personnel exposure. The stolen JCB answered that problem, and the answer worked. The Wikipedia article on the Loughgall ambush states it plainly. In the attack at the Birches, they had breached the base's perimeter fence with a digger that had a bomb in its bucket. It was planned to use the same tactic in an attack on the lightly manned Loughgall base. Same method. The same young man likely driving the digger. The same brigade. The RUC station at Loughgall was everything the East Tyrone Brigade had been targeting for 2 years. Rural, small, fixed schedule. Part-time staff in predictable windows. It opened from 9 until 11 in the morning and from 5 until 7 in the evening. 3 local officers worked those hours. That is the document-level confirmation of the station's staffing from the Pat Finucane Centre's records compiled from inquest proceedings. 3 men in a small building at known times, following the same pattern each working day. The IRA's stated operational goal for Loughgall was explicit. Arrive during the 5 to 7 window, kill the 3 constables as they came off duty, and simultaneously destroy the building with the bomb. Not breach a perimeter and leave, as at the Birches. Arrive at a manned building during a known staffing window and kill the men inside. A large bomb packed into an oil drum in the bucket of a stolen digger, driven up to a building where 3 specific officers were known to be present and preparing to leave their shift. That bomb was for those 3 officers and that building at that precise time. The method established at the Birches had been tested against an empty station. Loughgall was the application of the same method to a building with people in it, timed to the moment those people were known to be there. The preparation for the 8th of May 1987 followed the Birches model in every significant detail, with the additional complexity that this target had people to be killed, not just a building to be destroyed. A blue Toyota Hiace van, registration GJI 4417, was stolen by masked men from a business in Dungannon owned by Colm McGrath. It had been being driven by Peter Corr when the hijacking occurred. A JCB backhoe loader was taken from a farm at Lislackley Road, approximately 2 miles west of Loughgall. 2 IRA members were left at the farm to prevent the owners raising an alarm before the operation was complete. A large bomb, the sources conflict sharply on the exact figure, with estimates ranging well upward of 200 pounds, and no single weight would be reliable, was packed into an oil drum and placed in the digger's front bucket, partially obscured by rubble and wired to 2 40-second fuses. On the morning of the 8th, the stolen digger had been observed being retrieved from its hiding place at a local farm. RUC Covert Intelligence Unit E4A had located it and was tracking it. The intelligence confirming the planned attack had reportedly reached British authorities at least 10 days before the date, and the specific target at least 10 days out. Operation Judy was the British codename. 24 SAS soldiers were positioned at the station, 6 inside with the 3 local constables, another 18 concealed in 5 locations in wooded areas, behind walls and fences, in the grounds and lanes around the building. They were armed with M16 and Heckler & Koch G3 rifles, alongside 2 L7A2 general-purpose machine guns, positioned to cover the approach. When the covert observation post monitoring the digger reported it was being moved, the soldiers took their final positions. The 4-vehicle convoy arrived in Loughgall from the northeast shortly after 7 in the evening. The digger, the blue Toyota Hiace, and 2 scout cars. All 8 members of the assault unit were armed, wearing bulletproof vests, boiler suits, surgical gloves, and balaclavas. Their shoes had been covered with heavy socks to defeat forensic identification of boot prints at the scene. Every precaution possible had been taken to ensure that if something went wrong and the unit scattered, there would be no physical evidence left behind to identify them. That level of preparation, the socks over the shoes, the surgical gloves, the identical boiler suits, wasn't the behaviour of men who expected to be stopped. It was the procedure of an experienced unit that had run 2 successful attacks and intended to run a third, and wanted no trace left on the ground that could be used in a courtroom afterward. They had not anticipated that the courtroom would be rendered irrelevant by what the next few minutes would produce. The van and digger made 2 slow passes of the station, moving through the village road and doubling back. The building appeared quiet from outside. The SAS soldiers inside weren't visible. Some members of the unit, riding in the scout cars watching the target, registered that something felt wrong. The station was too still. One recalled later that something seemed badly wrong. The debate that followed in the van was real. Some members argued for aborting. But the debate was brief. Unit Commander Patrick Kelly made the decision to proceed. They had come this far, with a bomb in the digger's bucket and a timetable. They went in. Tony Gormley and Gerard O'Callaghan left the van and climbed up onto the digger with Declan Arthurs. Journalist Peter Taylor, who interviewed the surviving scout car occupants, described them as literally riding shotgun, with weapons in one hand and a lighter in the other. At approximately 7:15 in the evening, Arthurs drove the digger toward the station. The other 5 followed in the van. Eugene Kelly at the wheel, Patrick Kelly in the front passenger seat, Jim Lynagh, Padraig McKierney, and Seamus Donnelly in the rear. The same formation that had been planned and rehearsed. Digger crew first, assault team following, van stopping short to dismount the gun team. The JCB crashed through the light perimeter fence at speed. The fence went down. The fuses were lit. Patrick Kelly jumped from the van's passenger seat and immediately opened fire on the building. The others dismounted behind him. According to the Historical Inquiries Team's 2011 finding, and corroborated by the European Court of Human Rights judgment, the IRA unit opened fire before the SAS responded. The SAS response came within seconds, from 6 positions inside the building and 18 positions concealed outside. M16 and Heckler & Koch G3 rifles opened simultaneously. The 2L7A2 general-purpose machine guns were part of the outgoing fire. 600 cartridge cases would be recovered from the scene. One former RUC Special Branch officer, John Shackles, described how detonating cord had been strung along a line of fir trees opposite the station, beyond a playing field. The cord was fired immediately before the SAS initiated the main ambush, a sharp, splitting crack, to distract the IRA team in the fraction of a second before the primary fire began. The bomb in the digger's bucket detonated. Accounts differ on whether it went off during the firefight or after. Jonathan Trigg, citing his own research, concluded the bomb detonated several seconds after the SAS had already opened fire. Whatever the exact sequence, the oil drum exploded. The digger was destroyed. Half the station's structure collapsed or was severely damaged. 2 HMSU officers inside suffered injuries, one with severe head trauma, the other a broken nose, and were helped out by the uniformed officer. An SAS soldier received a facial injury from glass after a window was broken by gunfire. None of the British side was killed. All 8 members of the IRA attack unit were dead. In a laneway opposite Loughgall FC's premises, Declan Arthurs was found shot multiple times. He was 21 years old. The cigarette lighter was still in his right hand. Post-mortem examinations on all 8 confirmed multiple gunshot wounds. All 8 had been shot in the head. One of the IRA scouts in the escape cars had turned back toward the station before the shooting ended. He was briefly stopped at an SAS checkpoint and could see down the road to the van. He said afterward that he knew they were wiped out. He could see the carnage down at the van. Anthony Hughes, 36 years old, from near Moy, County Tyrone, was driving home with his brother Oliver through Loughgall when their white Citroën GS entered the ambush zone. The two were auto repairmen who had been repairing a lorry. They had no connection to the IRA. Oliver was wearing blue coveralls similar to those worn by the IRA team. Roughly 130 yards from the station, soldiers opened fire from behind, killing Anthony. Oliver was shot 14 times and survived. The Citroën took approximately 34 rounds. The village had not been evacuated. Doing so would have alerted the IRA unit to the waiting soldiers. A mother and her child sheltered in the church hall after a stray round struck the rear window of their Ford Sierra 250 yards from the station. What the scene left behind wasn't ambiguous, and it's worth spending a moment on the physical record before moving to what it means. Approximately 600 British cartridge cases were recovered from the station and its surrounding area. 125 bullet holes in the Toyota Hiace van's bodywork. 78 cartridge cases fired from IRA weapons were recovered. 8 IRA firearms were collected from the scene. 3 Heckler & Koch G3 rifles, 1 FNFAL, 2 FNFNC rifles, a Franchi SPAS-12 shotgun, and a Ruger Security 6 revolver. The RUC linked those 8 weapons to 7 murders and 12 attempted murders across Mid-Ulster. Declassified documents released from the National Archives of Ireland in 2017 went further. British ballistic testing connected those same weapons to 40 to 50 killings, including every IRA-caused fatality in counties Fermanagh and Tyrone in 1987 before Loughgall. The Ruger Security 6 was the one taken from Reserve Constable William Clemence's body at Ballygawley on the 7th of December 1985. It had been on the brigade's operations for 17 months. It arrived at Loughgall and it was recovered there. The blue Toyota Hiace van, registration GJI 4417, 125 bullet entry points catalogued in its panels, was reportedly taken to Gough Barracks in Armagh in the aftermath. According to oral testimony and narrative accounts from the period, it was kept there for years, unpainted, unsandblasted, in the condition it had been recovered in, the entry points still visible in the bodywork. The formal documentary record does not fully corroborate how long it was kept or in precisely what capacity, and the claim should carry that qualification. But the van existed. It was documented at the scene. It's a specific, non-sentimental object that fixes what happened at Loughgall in the category of material evidence. A vehicle used to deliver an armed team to a manned building at a predictable staffing time, recovered with evidence of what it ran into. The word ambush appears in almost every headline about Loughgall, and in military terms it's accurate. Soldiers concealed in advance, opening fire on an enemy who had not yet seen them from every position. That is an ambush by definition. The question isn't whether the term is militarily correct. It's what the term's dominance in the public framing has done to the wider narrative. Ambush implies a target moving through territory unexpectedly, caught by a concealed enemy. It carries a suggestion of the arbitrary. You were ambushed because you happened to be there. These men didn't happen to be in Loughgall. They drove to it in a stolen van with automatic weapons, having previously attacked 2 other stations with the same organisation and the same methods, with a large bomb in a stolen digger's bucket, intending to detonate that bomb inside a building where 3 officers were scheduled to be present at the end of their shift. Reinforcing a garrison that sits on the verified 3rd target of a documented 2-year campaign isn't the same as lying in wait for the innocent. The ambush framing isn't wrong about what the SAS did that evening. It obscures, sometimes completely, what the East Tyrone Brigade was doing at the same moment. The 8 men who drove into Loughgall on the 8th of May 1987 are fully documented. Every name, every age, every townland. Patrick Joseph Kelly, born Carrickfergus, County Antrim, 19th of March 1957. Brigade Commander. He was in the van's passenger seat. He jumped out first and opened fire. The Historical Inquiries team placed his age at 32. He was buried at Edendork Cemetery, 2 miles from his home in Dungannon. James Lynagh, Jim, born the 13th of April 1956 on the Tully Estate, Monaghan Town. 31 years old, Sinn Féin councillor for Monaghan Urban District Council in continuous elected office from June 1979 until the evening he died. Jerry Adams spoke at his graveside. In the rear of the van, buried at Latlerken Old Graveyard, Monaghan Town. Padraig McKerney, born the 18th of December 1954, 32 years old, from Moy, County Tyrone. Mays escapee, 25th of September 1983. Operational again by early 1984. In the rear of the van, beside Lynagh. 3 more years of active operations after walking out of the most secure prison in the United Kingdom. Buried at Moy, Declan Arthurs. Born the 28th of October 1965 in Galbally, County Tyrone. 21 years old. The 4th of 6 children of Paddy and Amelia Arthurs. He had driven the JCB at the Birches. He drove it again at Loughgall and was found in the lane with the lighter still in his hand. His mother told journalist Peter Taylor he was mowed down. He could have been taken prisoner. They knew that the boys were coming, and they lay in wait. He is buried at St John's Cemetery, Galbally. Seamus Donnelly, 19 years old, the youngest man in the unit, also from Galbally, County Tyrone. He is buried at St John's Cemetery beside Arthur's. Michael Gormley, Tony, 25 years old. He climbed onto the digger in the final approach, riding alongside Arthur's with a weapon and a lighter. Eugene Kelly, 25 years old. He drove the van. Gerard O'Callaghan, 29 years old. Also on the digger with Arthur's and Gormley. He had been sentenced to 14 years in August 1980 after being caught with a loaded Sten gun alongside Padraig McKerney. He had served that sentence and resumed operations. A 2002 Republican booklet described him as an ordinary young fella who made an extraordinary sacrifice, laying down his life in the struggle for Irish freedom with his comrades from the East. All 8 names are on the public record, all 8 ages, all 8 home areas, all 8 family backgrounds, available in newspapers, inquest documents, television documentaries, and historical archives. Their photographs have appeared in commemorative material for nearly 4 decades. Thousands attended their funerals in May 1987, the largest Republican funerals in Northern Ireland, it was reported at the time, since the hunger strikers of 1981. Jerry Adams, speaking at the graveside, said, "It does not understand the Jim Liners, the Padraig McKierneys, or the Seamus McIlwains. It thinks it can defeat them. It never will." The funerals were events of considerable public scale, documented in newspapers and television footage. The names aren't hidden or difficult to find. The 24 SAS soldiers who were inside and around that station aren't named in any publicly released British government document. Their identities were protected under public interest immunity provisions during the 1995 inquest, in the European Court of Human Rights proceedings, and in every subsequent legal proceeding. New inquests were ordered in 2015. In October 2023, the coroner confirmed there wasn't enough time to complete the Loughgall inquest before the Northern Ireland Troubles, Legacy and Reconciliation Act's May 2024 deadline, though he ordered preparation work to continue, noting that abandoning the process at that point would be an abdication of this court's responsibility to ensure that these deaths are investigated. The Act itself faced legal challenges in Northern Ireland's courts, was partially struck down, drew opposition from every Northern Ireland political party, and prompted the succeeding Westminster government to announce its intent to repeal and replace it. The legal question of what to do with aged former soldiers and decades-old operations remains genuinely unresolved. No specific prosecution of named SAS soldiers from Loughgall has been publicly initiated. Whether investigations might eventually proceed, or whether the legacy legislation's final shape will foreclose them, is still being determined in courts and Parliament. What isn't unresolved is the operational record. The men at Loughgall on the SAS side were responding to a unit that had destroyed 2 RUC stations in the preceding 17 months, killed 2 police officers in the first attack, and arrived at a third target with the same stolen equipment, the same bomb delivery method, the same covering fire formation, and a revolver taken from one of those dead constables. The context does not make legal proceedings simple, but it makes the operational picture plain to anyone prepared to look at it in sequence. 3 attacks, the same brigade, the same stated intent, the same method iterated and refined. Ballygawley, 7th of December 1985. 2 active service units, armed assault and bomb unit, 2 constables shot dead at the gate, a £100 device placed inside and detonated. Method established: this brigade can take a manned RUC station, clear it at gunpoint and level it. The Birches, 11th of August 1986. Stolen JCB, £200 bomb in the front bucket, covering fire on the building, station destroyed, gun team escaped by boat across Lynagh. Method refined: the vehicle delivers the bomb through the perimeter, the gun team suppresses the approaches. Loughgall, 8th of May 1987. Stolen JCB, large bomb in the front bucket, a stolen van carrying the assault team, covering fire on a manned building, attack timed for the station's known staffing window, the same digger driver who had run the same machine at the Birches. Same stolen construction equipment as the transport mechanism, same bomb in bucket delivery, same covering fire from dismounted van passengers, same soft part-time rural RUC target with predictable opening hours. The brigade's own Wikipedia entry, drawing on multiple published sources, states that at Loughgall, the IRA unit used the same tactics as it had done in the Birches attack. The only difference at Loughgall was that this time the soft target had been reinforced. The unit drove into it anyway, because the pattern had worked twice and there was no reason inside their own operational logic to expect it to fail a third time. 8 names on one side of the public record. 8 ages, 8 townlands, 8 family backgrounds, 8 sets of archived photographs. The men who drove the bomb to Loughgall are among the most extensively documented individuals in any account of the Troubles. The men who met them there have no names in any publicly available British government document. That condition has held since 1987. It held through the 1995 inquest. It held through the ECHR proceedings. It holds today through the legacy legislation debate and whatever comes after it. What that anonymity protects and why it persists while the opposite condition holds on the other side of the same event is a question the public record leaves open. 2 things are simply true. The 8 men who drove to Loughgall are fully visible to history. The men who were waiting for them aren't. That is the shape of the record, and it's the shape it has held for nearly 4 decades. Subscribe for more stories like this.